Hello, and welcome to the Knox County Public Library's tutor team. My name is Mr. Frederick, and today I will be tutoring 4th and 5th grade math. Today's topic is everybody's favorite topic when it comes to math, all about fractions. Now, when we talk about our standards today, we are not going to be covering the entire standard here. We're just going to kind of hit bits and pieces in 4th and 5th grade. For 4th grade, we're going to be comparing two fractions with different numerators and different denominators using the greater than, less than, or equal symbols. We're also going to be explaining different interpretations of fractions, including parts of a whole, parts of a set, fractions that are equal to 1, 1/2, and we're going to be rounding numbers using a number line. So, the first thing we're going to do is look at our new concepts. Our first concept is fractions equal to 1. Each circle below is divided into parts. Together, the parts of each circle make up a whole. We see that 2/2 is the same as 1 whole. We also see that 3/3, 4/4, and 5/5 are always a way to say 1 whole. If the numerator, the top number, and the denominator, the bottom number of a fraction, are the same, the fraction equals 1. So if you look over here at the fraction models below, you can see that the entire circle is shaded in. That's another way to know that you have 1 whole. Whenever you have the number of pieces shaded in is your numerator, the amount of pieces you have is your denominator, and when they're all equal, they equal 1. So let's look at some examples here. Which of these fractions equals 1? We're going to go through each one, and then we're going to talk about the solution on the bottom. 1/6. Well, I just learned that for a fraction to equal 1, that they have to have the same numerator top number and denominator bottom number. 1/6 is not the same, so therefore it cannot equal 1. If I look at B, we have 6/6, which is the same on the top in the numerator's position and in the bottom in the denominator's position. That one does equal 1. And we have C, 7/6, where in this case, the numerator is bigger than the denominator. This does not equal 1. It's actually greater than 1. It is what we call an improper fraction. Anytime your numerator is bigger than the bottom, the denominator, it is an improper fraction. Their solution says that a fraction equals 1 if its numerator and denominator are equal. The fraction equals to 1, in this case, is B, 6/6. Now, let's look at example 2. It says we're going to write a fraction that is equal to 1 and has a denominator of 7. So what we do know here is remember that a numerator and denominator have to be the same for it to equal 1. I am going to take, and we're going to take our dry erase board here. I know the denominator has to be 7, which means it's going to go down in the bottom. It's going to be a 7. Now, for it to equal 1, it has to be the same. It has to be equal. So it's also going to have a 7 on the top. Because same numerator, same denominator, that equals 1 whole. Another way to look at this is if I had 7 circles and I had 7 of those filled in, that would be the same thing as 7/7. Or if I had some square divided into 7 equal parts and all 7 of those were shaded in, that would also be 7/7. Now their solution says that a fraction equals 1 if its numerator and denominator are the same. So if the denominator is 7, the numerator must also be 7, and we write that as 7/7. Moving on to the new concept, fractions equal to 1/2. If the numerator of a fraction is half the denominator, then the fraction equals 1/2. Notice below that the top number of each fraction illustrated is half the bottom number. And like I told you before in the first one, if you don't remember or like what 1/2 of a number is, you can look at those fraction models and you can kind of see that half of that circle is shaded in. So when you look at the first circle, we have 1/2. 1 out of 2 pieces are shaded in. The second circle, we have 2/4. Those have 2 shaded in out of the 4 pieces. 3/6. We have 3 out of 6 shaded in. 4/8. Those are 4 out of 8 are shaded in. But you can notice that the amount shaded in each circle is equivalent. It's the same. So all of those equal 1/2. And you may say, wait a minute, Mr. Frederick, I don't understand that because 1/2, 2/4, 3/6, 4/8, those are all different numbers. They are all different numbers, but whenever they're divided up equally. So they all have this mean the same amount. They are equivalent. So all of those equal 1/2 in simplest terms. Now, let's look at an example here. Which fraction equals 1/2? 3/7. Now, I want to tell you something. When you have an odd number on the bottom, it's impossible to divide that in equally. So most of the time, when you have an odd number on the bottom, it's really hard to get 1/2 out of it, unless it has a decimal at the top. So 3/7, it can't work. That's going to be less than 1/2. Looking at B, 4/4, we have the same numerator and the same denominator, and I remember from what I was told before, if I have the same numerator and the same denominator, that equals 1/2. C, 5/10. I know that if I take 10 and I divide it by 2, I'm going to get 5. So that does equal 1/2. Another thing that I could do is I could divide a rectangle into 10 equal pieces, cover in, or shade in, 5 of those, and I can look to see if that equals 1/2. Does it take up half of the rectangle? Yes, it does. So 5/10 equals 1/2. The next one is 5/9. And if you remember from what we talked about already, if it's an odd number on the bottom, it's hard to make that equal 1/2. So that one I'm just going to rule it out. If I look at the solution on the bottom, it says, since 5 is half of 10, the fraction equal to 1/2 is C, 5/10. Now, this is a different kind of problem. Here we're going to be comparing to see which fraction is either greater than, less than, or equal to. Now, when we're doing this, you have 3 symbols you use. You have greater than, you have less than, and you have equal to. I always say that this is Al the alligator, and alligator, he's really, really hungry, and he's always going to open up and chomp that bigger number. So his mouth is always going to be open to the bigger number. So when I have 3/8, I'm actually going to take and I'm going to make a rectangle, and I'm going to divide it up into 8 equal pieces. I'm going to shade 3 of those in because your numerator is always the amount that are shaded in. Now, and I'm going to look at that. Does that look like half of my shape is shaded in? No, actually it's a little less than half. So I know that when I have 3/8 over here, that it is going to be less than 1/2. If I look at the solution, they give you an example here. Let me go back to the full screen here. It says the fraction 1/2 equals 4/8. Since 3/8 is less than 4/8, we know that 3/8 is less than 1/2. And if you look at the example on the bottom, you can see, remember how I said that Al the alligator, he's always going to eat that bigger number. His mouth is open to eat the 1/2. So 3/8 is less than 1/2. So example 5. This time you're going to use a number line. We're going to round 6/7 to the nearest whole number. Now, a whole number is a number without a fraction attached to it. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., going on the line. If I have 6 7/10, I know that if it's less than 1/2, I'm going to go down to 6. The next number up is 7. So if it's greater than 1/2, it's going to move up to 7. So I'm not really looking at the 6 here. I'm looking at this fraction next to it, 7/10. Now, I know from earlier what we said that 5/10 is 1/2. 7/10 is actually bigger than 1/2. So since it's bigger than 1/2, and it's going to be closer to 7, if you look on the solution on that number line down there, I'm going to bump it up to 7. They say halfway between 6 and 7 is 6.5. We know that 6 7/10 is greater than 6.5 because 7/10 is greater than 5/10. which equals 1/2. So 6 7/10 is going to round up to 7. Lesson practice time. Now, what I want you to do now is I want you to pause your screen, get a piece of paper and pencil, and I want you to do A through G on your own, and then we're going to come back and we're going to go over some of the answers. So, letter A says, write a fraction equal to 1 that has a denominator of 6. So we know the denominator is the bottom number, so we're going to put a 6 here. Now, I know to make it equal to 1, I have to have the same number on the bottom as I do on the top. So I'm going to make another 6. And we have 6 6, which is equal to 1. Looking at letter B, which of these fractions equals 1? Well, 9/10 is not the same on the denominator and the numerator's part. So that can't equal 1. B, 10/10. I have the same numerator, same denominator. That equals 1. 11/10. Well, that's that improper fraction again. 11/10 is actually bigger than, or the 11 is actually bigger than the 10, so it can't be equal to 1. It's actually bigger or greater than 1. Look at C. What fraction what fraction name for 1 is shown by each of these pictures? Well, when I look at C, I have a circle cut into pie slices. The number of slices there are is your bottom number. And if I look and count, I have 6 of those pieces. Now, the numerator is going to be how many of those pieces are shaded in. And if I count, the entire circle is shaded in. So that means there are also 6 pieces shaded in. So my answer should have been 6 6. Now, if I go on and let's look at letter D. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to count up how many squares are there, and there are 9 of them. Now remember, the numerator is always the amount shaded in. If I go through and count how many are shaded in, there are 9 shaded in, so it's 9/9. Now let's go and look at letter E. Write a fraction equal to 1/2 with a denominator of 12. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to make a chart. I'm going to divide a rectangle into 12 pieces. Right now we're at 8. I'm going to try to make them as equal as possible. Now, I'm going to go in. I'm going to find out where about half of those are, and I'm going to shade them in. That's close to 1/2 here. How many did I shade in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our answer should be 6/12. Now, comparing 9/20 and 1/2. Now, I know that half of 20 is 10. 9 is close, but it's just not quite there yet. So 1/2 is going to be greater than 9/20. Now I'm going to read this though. 9/20 is less than 1/2. So the opening to your mouth, the alligator eats the bigger number, should be opening towards 1/2. And let's look at letter G. We have round 5 3/8 to the nearest whole number. 3/8 is not quite a half, so it's actually closer to 5 than it is 6. Apologize for kind of going through those last two, but I'm running out of time, so I need to make sure we kind of get to this part. Here's another example. You can pause and look again and go over your answers if you missed it going over it with me. Now, thanks for joining me today, and I hope you will tune in again. You can watch this Tutor Team video again, as well as other videos, by searching YouTube for KCPL Tutor Team, or by clicking on the link below. I hope you've learned a little bit about fractions today. I hope you will join me again next time. And until then, see you later.